All right, let's get started. A very warm welcome to our webinar on Employee Center, the what, the why, and how of deployment. My name is Pooja Gupta. I am a staff product manager with the Unified Employee Experience team. And I got to tell you, it's so exciting to see all these different names and different geographies being mentioned in the chat. Like, it's amazing to see we have audience from all over the world. Thank you so much for just going with the flow and writing where you are dialing in from. So super exciting to see that. We have a packed agenda, but we will be, hopefully, it will be of super use for you. But before we get started, like in any of these presentations, you can imagine we can bring up some of the roadmap items or forward-looking statements. So just wanted to call out the safe harbor before we dive deep into any of the content. So please keep the safe harbor in mind as you're reviewing this webinar. To give you more context about this webinar, this is part of Live on ServiceNow series, and we have webinars and meetups and even office hours as part of this. And it covers all of our different products and use cases and challenges that customers would potentially face. So I highly recommend this series, and you're part of this event. But definitely browse others, and you will see the link to all our events, all our upcoming events mentioned in the chat. So feel free to explore this while we are just getting started with our webinar today. Additionally, just a few housekeeping things. Please stay on mute. We will be taking questions and use the Q&A panel to post your questions. We have people monitoring the Q&A panel and not really the chat panel. So if you please have questions and you want us to answer them live, use the Q&A channel. And feel free to introduce yourself while you're asking the question. We would love to know who you are, what exactly you're facing, what is the context behind the question. So any information on that, we would love to get that. And the session is recorded. This is a webinar. We record our webinars and share it with the community so they can benefit it later on. Just wanted to let you know that. So the recording will be available as well as the slides. So don't worry about taking notes. Please feel free to just use this session to absorb the content and ask your questions and clarify any concerns that you may have. At the end of the session, you will be prompted for a short survey. We always want to improve these and make them better. So please share your feedback. We will really appreciate that. All right. So before we dive deep into the agenda, I want to start with a poll, just so I can get a sense of how familiar you are with Employee Center and what stage you are in terms of deploying or planning to deploy Employee Center. And this is a very important set of two questions, because this will kind of give me a sense of where I should focus across the presentation today. So I'll just give you a few minutes to answer the poll questions. I'm seeing quite a few people with somewhat familiar, that's good. A few with yes, and some with no as well. I just want to let you know, those who are still answering and those who have answered no. We won't be diving too deep in like Employee Center capabilities, but feel free to ask your questions. We will cover a little bit of basics in terms of packaging and what it is and all, but I do encourage you to dive deeper into the resources that I'll share at the end. But feel free to ask your questions if it is confusing. All right, so let's open up our poll question 2 as well. Okay, so let me just do that. Okay. Now, in terms of deploying, we will be focusing on the deployment steps. So I'm seeing a lot of you are in planning to deploy, which is the ideal state that you should be. Those who have already deployed, we can discuss how you can further expand on it, any challenges you have faced. So feel free to post your questions with that lens. it's good to see, like, almost 80% of the folks on the call today are planning to deploy. So that's exactly the stage that we expect you to be for this webinar. I'll give everyone a few more minutes. All right. Okay. Thank you so much for answering these questions. I'm going to just share the results just so you have it. And let me introduce you to the agenda. So, as you can expect, we are going to focus on why you should deploy Employee Center as the first thing. So this is where I'll give you some more context around what is Employee Center and what are the benefits around it. So those who are not familiar with Employee Center, hopefully this section will be of most value for you. And then we dive deep into what you need to deploy Employee Center. What are the considerations you need to make? What are the questions you need to ask? What you need to think about before you get into deploying Employee Center? And the last section is going to focus on the process steps required to deploy Employee Center. So I'll introduce you to the steps. I'll also introduce you some of the guidelines or leading practice guidelines that we have for deploying Employee Center. Things to keep in mind as you are in between that deployment phase for Employee Center. All right. Hopefully this agenda is super exciting. Let's dive deep into the first one. So, Employee Center is ServiceNow's new flagship product for delivering unified and engaging employee experiences across department and systems. So it's a portal that we have for all employee-facing use cases, and it is designed with a best practice experience delivered out of box. And the best part about it is that it's designed to scale. It's designed to move from a single department implementation to a multi-department implementation to even making it an enterprise portal or an employee destination site. And the move from the evolution from the single department to multi-department and the employee destination site is so seamless that organizations would not have to redesign their portal or reinvent the portal at all. Along with that, it comes shipped pre-configured for IT, SM, HRSD, workplace service delivery, legal service delivery, procurement service delivery, and I believe also risk. So if you own any of these products, all of these are actually pre-configured out of box for Employee Center. So it's truly our multi-department employee-facing portal or the front end for ServiceNow for the employees. The screenshot that you see on the left is what it looks like out of box. So for those of you who are not familiar, this is what we are talking about when we say Employee Center. So whenever you see something like this, that's Employee Center. Another thing to note about Employee Center is that it comes with a native and consumer-grade mobile experience. So we picked up the Now mobile application that we had for employees and kind of married it with Employee Center experience. So the same experience that is available on the portal view is also available on the mobile view. And you can see a screenshot of that over here. Another thing to mention about both the Employee Center and Now mobile piece is that they both are extensible. So you want to add, do more things, change some of the things, you want to add more widgets, new use cases. The portal is designed in a way that it is very easy to extend out widgets or pages, or even just create something new. Last but not the least thing to know about Employee Center is that it has pre-built integrations, and we have one of the deepest integrations with Microsoft Teams, where the entire Employee Center is embedded within Microsoft Teams. So a user who is on Teams can actually just stay on Teams and access the entire portal directly from there. And we also bring in Teams into the Employee Center portal view. So there's a lot on that as well. But deep integrations with different places where employees spend most of their time, and we may want to meet where employees are by embedding Employee Center over there. So a very high level view of Employee Center, but if you have questions, please post them. Now, this is another thing to remember and keep in mind as you think about Employee Center. It comes in two packages. It's a single portal. They both have the extension /ESC, if I can be a little technical here, but they come with two different packages. Employee Center gives you all of the capabilities that you would need for a multi-department service delivery. So request, knowledge. It also comes with the curated taxonomy, personalized and connected experiences, and it is again designed to be multi-department and extensible. So the Employee Center piece is something that is available to all our ServiceNow customers. So we basically want all our customers, all organizations who work with ServiceNow, to have a foundation that is consumer grade and sets them up for doing more and greater things with ServiceNow. And Employee Center creates that foundation. Employee Center Pro is an extension to Employee Center. So it's the same portal that extends with extra capabilities. And it includes a lot of cool things like targeted and actionable communications, so running campaigns and targeting different messages based on the audience that you define. Enterprise search, which is essentially a term that we use to describe searching for content that may be sitting outside of ServiceNow, for example, SharePoint, and searching for it directly from ServiceNow. So it creates an enterprise-wide search. Integrations with external systems. The SharePoint one is what I mentioned. And we have something called App Launcher, in which you can actually integrate with your SSO to highlight all the applications that you would need directly on the portal. So a lot of tailored and persona-driven experiences are also shipped as part of Employee Center Pro. So what you can see, it's much richer than Employee Center. And this is a premium offering. It's available with customers who have the HRSD Pro or Enterprise license, or it can also be licensed separately as a standalone SKU. If there are any questions on licensing, please feel free to ask in the Q&A. But this is an important thing to know, because before you start deploying, you would want to know which one you have access to. One more thing that I'll say, ServiceNow allows all our customers to try different products in their sub-prod environment. So if you do want to play around with Employee Center Pro, you can do that in your sub-prod environment. So Sharon, Pro version is not required to integrate with Microsoft 365. So the Teams integration does not require the Pro version. ITSM Pro does not include EC Pro. It only includes the standard Employee Center. Can you provide an example of tailored persona-driven experiences? This is something new that is coming in August, or it should be out. It's called Manager Hub. We have a separate experience tailored or focused on managers. Won't get too much into the depth for it, but search for the term Manager Hub and you will get information on this. So Integration Hub Enterprise. So if the company already has Integration Hub Enterprise, you don't get the pre-configurations. We do the pre-configurations, we make it embedded in the Employee Center Pro experience, and we create widgets and all the other things associated with that. So we have ESC through HRSD. Will we be able to replace that with Service Portal? Maria, that's a really good question, and it kind of sets me up for the next slide. So it's important to understand the origin of Employee Center and where it's coming from. Up till Quebec, forget about Rome and after that. And I hope you understand the family releases. The Quebec and Rome are our family releases. Both of them are from our 2001 timeframe. So Quebec, up till Quebec, we had two portals. One was Employee Service Center, it's also called ESC, and Service Portal. So ESC was the portal that was available to HRSD, and Service Portal was actually more like a demo portal that we had available just in the platform, not really a product, but it was there to just indicate what our portal capabilities are. But since it was not tied with any license, a lot of our customers ended up implementing Service Portal as a product and used that, customized it to create their employee offering. Now, the problem with that was it didn't set them up for success as they were growing into HRSD or other things. So what we did in Rome, we picked up ESC, so Employee Service Center. So Maria, this is where you would want to see. And we repackaged it, enhanced it, and rebranded it. So Employee Center Pro or Employee Center is nothing but an enhanced, repackaged, and rebranded version of Employee Service Center. So when you upgrade to Rome or any of the other releases after Rome, Employee Service Center automatically converts into Employee Center Pro. And we will dive deeper into this, like what that means and, like what that upgrade would look like in the future slides. But just keep that in mind. If you have Employee Service Center, you are already licensed for Employee Center Pro, because this is at par at our premium offering. And we took a piece out of it, Employee Center, and made it available for all our customers, just so that they have the right foundation as they grow into ITSM, HRSD, or any of the other spaces. Our recommendation to all our customers, even those who do not have an EC Pro license, is to always start with Employee Center, because that will set them up for success. Troy, I see your question. We currently have ITSM and are adding HRSD Pro, HDSM Pro. I'm actually not sure what HDSM Pro is, but HDSM, I don't know if anyone on the call knows what is HDSM and can just put it on the chat, but it's only available with, HRSD is what Troy was saying. Thank you, Troy, for clarifying. So if you're adding HRSD Pro, then you would be licensed for Employee Center Pro. So it's a per user license, like Employee Center Pro is a per user license. So you have to see the number of users that you're licensed for. And it is multi-department, so you can use it for IT and HR, both if you have both the licenses. It just depends on the number of users that you can give access to, because it's a per user license. Right, I think I have covered all the Q&A on this. If there are more, please keep posting on the Q&A panel. Can you please explain how Employee Center is different from Service Portal? I so love this, because that is very much my next slide. But before that, let me just cover the benefits in general. So I've been talking about it. I won't spend too much time on this benefits piece. The main benefit is that you set the right foundation for enterprise-wide service delivery. And that is where a lot of the organizations that work with us are heading towards, to simplify the employee experience in general. So employees don't have to go to multiple different places, multiple different portals and systems to access the information they need or do the job they need. We're also connecting all these systems to consolidate access, and we're creating capabilities and delivering capabilities that provide intranet-like engagement and communication. So it's a very, very powerful portal, is what I'm saying. Now, this question of how does Service Portal differentiate from Employee Center comes up very, very commonly. So I built this extensive slide and did not want to tailor it down for the webinar, because you can keep this as a takeaway for you later on. But one of the key things to remember is that Employee Center is a true product that ServiceNow is investing in and has built with the modern look and feel and the today's needs that employees and organizations have for employee experience. Whereas the Service Portal was something that we had built years ago as a demo of what the portal can achieve, the portal tech stack can achieve with ServiceNow. So it was never meant to be a product. There was never any investments in it to make it prettier, to make it look more consumer grade. So what happened, many customers would have to customize it to get to that level. Now, we have also done a big shift in terms of how content discovery works in Service Portal versus Employee Center. The main thing, I'll focus on what we did in Employee Center. In past, most of the portals would have a separate page for catalog, a separate page for knowledge, and employees had to figure out whether they need to go to catalog or knowledge. In Employee Center, what we did, we created topic pages, which are dynamically created based on content that is tagged to them. The topic pages actually have knowledge articles, catalog item, communications, applications, anything that an employee would need access to related to that topic. So searching for content and browsing for content is a lot easier in Employee Center. Then Employee Center is designed to scale. That was not a factor that we had in mind when we were designing Service Portal. There's AI search, there's unified browse. The other thing I want to highlight is Employee Center is delivered via store. So we have faster innovation. We ship quarterly updates. There are also investments in things like personalization. So we have a new capability called Employee Profile. We have favorites capability. So there are a lot more different things which are superior in terms of features and capabilities and are shipped out of box in Employee Center. So it definitely gives you a better starting point. The last but not the least is that Employee Center is truly designed to be omni-channel out of box, and that was something that is never considered in Service Portal. So if you want to have a mobile experience associated with the portal experience, you want to have the portal integrated in Teams, all of that has been really thought through in Employee Center and pre-built by ServiceNow. Having said that, both Employee Center and the Service Portal application is built on our Service Portal tech stack. The terminology can be a little confusing. So we have a tech stack called Service Portal, which is built on capability with AngularJS, and we have our own copy of AngularJS. So if there are any concerns that AngularJS is dying away, it's not. We have our own copy, we update it, we maintain it, we bug fix it, and we enhance it to deliver all the different capabilities that we're looking for. Because Employee Center is on the Service Portal tech stack, you have all the capabilities that were available for Service Portal for branding and customizing it, including the Service Portal designer. And then you also have the 200 plus widgets that were all available for Service Portal, available on Employee Center. So it's not that the widgets that we talk about for Employee Center and have like pre-configured are the only ones. You can pick any of the 200 shipped widgets for Service Portal and put it on Employee Center if that's what you want to do. So hopefully this clarifies. Let me just quickly pause and see if there are any other questions. Oh, so Bruce, Geneva is like really long time back. That was when we like potentially spoke about it. It was also that there are two portals. One is Employee Service Center and Service Portal. Employee Service Center was our product. We were not investing in the Service Portal piece of it. Is there a migration path from Service Portal to Employee Center? I'll talk about it in just a few minutes. Pre-configured services for Employee Center or Employee Center Pro. It's a good feedback. We'll think about it and get back to you. Okay, so all the other questions I think we will touch upon when we get to the other section. So in the interest of time, I'm going to move there. So what do you need to deploy Employee Center? On the left-hand side of this page, we have the prerequisites. So of course, you need to be on Rome release because Employee Center came out in Rome. You need to have access to ServiceNow store. So Employee Center is delivered via the ServiceNow store. So it's important to have access to it to make sure you're getting the latest or the greatest. Having said that, if you don't have access to ServiceNow store, Employee Center does true up to the next family release. So if you upgrade to San Diego, you would have the November store release that we shipped as part of the San Diego family release. So it's not a showstopper if you don't have access to ServiceNow Store. We just recommend that you use that because Store is always ahead of family releases in terms of capabilities. And then if you are looking at Employee Center Pro, you need to have HRSD Pro or Enterprise license, or you will have to separately license Employee Center Pro. Now, that's in terms of prerequisites. One of the main things when you start thinking about deploying Employee Center is to think about your organization's EX strategy. You have to literally take a step back, and I recommend doing it at an enterprise level, not just your department, and think about what are the different access points that an employee would need to access to get help. What are the different portals? Do you want to unify them? Are there things that you may want to migrate into a single experience or something like that? So that's an important thing to think about as you're thinking about deploying Employee Center. And that exactly ties with your employee experience vision. Now, I'm not saying that you have to deliver on the in your organization's employee experience vision, but you have to have that vision in mind as you are thinking about your deployment. And that gets you to the question, who are the stakeholders? So I won't spend too much time on it because it is a little bit more in terms of business. I want to focus more on the deployment piece, but this is an important thing to keep in mind. Like, you're not making this decision in isolation, and you should always think from an enterprise point of view. Now, and next piece is you need to understand what are the different capabilities available to you. So what are the different features with Employee Center? What are the different widgets? Same with Employee Center Pro versus Employee Center. So if you want to make any changes for licensing, this is the time before you start your deployment that you would make that. This slide is just a reference. I would say use our community, Employee Center community, and I'll share the link later on in the presentation. Use that to get additional details on what's available and also product talks. So this is just to give you a sense of what you need to think about. Now, let's talk about the deployment parts. And there are some questions on this which I will address as we go through this. Now, if you are using a service portal application deployment right now, so let's say you are ITSM or any other customer with any other product but HRSD, you are likely using the service portal application, that's /SP. So we recommend you to move out of this experience. And typically we have seen a lot of customers who have the service portal just very out of box and not much customization. This migration is easy. But there are also organizations who have heavily customized the service portal application. We'll talk about how you can migrate into Employee Center. Now, I do want to highlight, we're not enforcing this migration. We're not saying that you have to migrate it today and we are going to decommission service portal next month or something like that. We're not decommissioning service portal. This is a recommendation that you migrate. You can time it as it works for your organization. Now, as you're thinking about Employee Center, you may also be thinking that I have this external page or an external site, which is not sitting on ServiceNow. But I would like to move to Employee Center because now I have this nice product available from ServiceNow, which looks good and kind of serves for the experiences that I want to create. So one migration path that is into Employee Center is from external sites into Employee Center. And again, both of these could be Employee Center or Employee Center Pro. When it comes to the customers who are already using Employee Service Center, it's an upgrade. Because remember I told you that Employee Center is nothing but a repackaged and enhanced and rebranded version of Employee Service Center. So when you upgrade to Roam, you will actually see that rebranding happen automatically. But the capabilities are actually in the store, or the latest capabilities are in the store. So you are essentially moving to Employee Center Pro and getting the latest capabilities from the store applied to your environment. We'll touch deeply on what this means. One thing I want to point out is when you upgrade, we won't like wipe out your current implementation and move it to the new one. So I just want to ease any concerns on that. We don't do that. It's almost like any upgrade. You opt in to the new things and decide what you want to use. Let me just cover one more slide and then pause for questions. So another thing that we highlight to customers pretty often is that there's a lot that you can achieve with Employee Center Pro. There's a lot of different capabilities, and we understand that organizations are at different maturity paths. We actually did an academy session that talked about multi-stage deployment strategies. And what you see on the left-hand side, these are all the different things that you could potentially choose to have a crawl, walk, run approach. So think about that. Like, what are we starting with? What is our crawl approach? And how we will build into a run or like a more mature stage with Employee Center is something that is definitely an important decision to make in the beginning. And I'm not going to go in depth for that because we did an academy session on it, and I'd encourage you to go see that one. All right. So before we go deep, let me just take questions. We are doing an implementation of ITSM module only. The client is not interested to use ServiceNow Employee Center Vision. Can we continue to use the service portal and not convert ESC as you mentioned? So we recommend, our official recommendation is to not do any new deployment on service portal. You can always use Employee Center as your starting point and change it. The homepage that is shipped with Employee Center is not necessarily what you have to apply as the homepage for the client. But we recommend that you use Employee Center as the starting point because that's where we are investing in terms of new capabilities. In the service portal application, you may see some bug fixes being made, but we are not shipping like new capabilities. For example, when we ship favorites, when we ship profile, all of those are designed to work with Employee Center, and it will take a lot of work to get them work to service portal. So our recommendation is any new implementation should always be Employee Center as the starting point. If there is someone who is using service portal already and wants to continue using it for some time, they can do that. Okay, what is the difference in terms of functionality that we need to lift and shift from Quebec to Rome or Tokyo in the future for HRSD? So every release will have some work. But I want to say that the biggest lift in terms of just the portal will be from Quebec to Rome. Because that's when you are deploying Employee Center for the first time. Once you have done that, the other capabilities are incremental and are not like a shift of paradigm in terms of the experience. So it will be a smaller lift. So moving to Employee Center the first time is probably the biggest lift, and depending on your implementation, that how big that lift is will differ. Right. Let's see the next question. Today, we only have ITSM and SecOps, no CSM or HRSD, and we use Service Portal and now Mobile Agent. So is it required to migrate to Employee Center? So like I said, it's not required, but we recommend you to migrate to Employee Center, especially if you're moving beyond Rome. It's where we are investing, and if getting the new capabilities work with your old environment is going to be harder to deploy and get that in your experience. And if you migrate to Employee Center once, then you don't have to do that heavy lift again and again. Is it expected that any ATF test that we now have for Service Portal will also work for Employee Center? I believe so. It depends. The tech stack is still the same, so a lot of it here will work, but I think you should still also reevaluate, just take a look at if you want to add or delete anything. Should we use new deployments for external facing portals? So Employee Center is designed for employee use cases. Could you use it? Technically, you possibly can, but it's not designed for customer facing or external facing use cases. There are some capabilities you may also feel a little challenged in effectively using with external users. For example, content targeting. You won't have that data for external users to do the right content targeting, and it's a little difficult to achieve on that. So just want to keep that in mind. And I do see some people raising hands. In the interest of time, I'm just taking questions in the Q&A panel, but I'm trying to answer them live as much as I can. So please put your questions in the Q&A. I'll try to save some time in the end for anyone who wants to raise their hand and speak up. Let me just take this last question and then I'll move into the migration steps. So how does Employee Center work with MSPs that have multiple clients using domain separation? So I believe the employee service portal tech stack does not support domain separation. So whatever, like we haven't touched anything on that piece. So however the MSPs who are working with multiple clients did that, they can continue doing the same thing. Dave, Employee Center Pro, is that what enables integrations with Teams? No, there are different set of licensing requirements for Teams. I would encourage you to go check on portal product docs, but Employee Center Pro is not required. All right, so let's jump into the migration steps. Now, these are specifically for Service Portal to Employee Center migration steps. You could also think of this for someone who's trying to migrate from an external system into this. The way you see the color coded, the light green ones are the ones which will be required for all EC deployments. So it's not something special that you're doing for migration. I thought that would be interesting to know, that you know how different is migration over upgrade or a new deployment. And the red ones at the bottom are the ones, the reddish ones, are the ones which are things that you will have to think about for the migration specifically. So let's start with number one. You of course have to upgrade to Rome or any of the above family releases. We encourage you to take the latest one as much as possible. And then you get the latest store release from the latest Employee Center app from the ServiceNow store. Now, good thing about ServiceNow store is that most features are backward compatible. So even if you are upgrading to Rome and let's say there is an August store release, a lot of the capabilities that we are shipping in August this month essentially will also work with Rome. So like that's an advantage of ServiceNow store. So upgrade, getting to the right releases is important. Second piece, and I think this is the biggest lift that you would have as you deploy Employee Center across all organizations. So those who are not migrating also, like, this is an important one for you to listen. You have to set up curated experiences. Now, for those who are new, curated experiences is that new content discovery paradigm that we have on Employee Center, where you set up a hierarchy of topics. So think of it like IT, hardware, computers. It could be like a set of 3 tier of topics. And you're connecting all your content to these topics. So identifying what these topics will be for you and what content will be connected where, and actually connecting that content is the biggest lift that you have to do. To ease it, what we recommend, as you can see in the first bullet in number 2 over here, is to clone the out-of-box taxonomy. So we actually ship a widely researched taxonomy that we see working across all industries as a starting point for you. So use that out-of-box taxonomy as a starting point, modify it that you would need, and add content to it. Now, the way to do this is not necessary in the system. I would say take the taxonomy in an Excel and are now create capabilities. You can just use our community to get there. Actually provide you an Excel with all of the out-of-box taxonomy topics listed. Use the Excel to actually create a taxonomy structure that works for you. You can do that by mapping the taxonomy topics with the catalog categories or knowledge categories that you have, and actually see if all the categories that you have created map into the new taxonomy, the topics. And you would want to modify and iterate on the topic structure in the Excel. Don't do it in the system. And in the system, once you have come up with that taxonomy structure, clone the out-of-box taxonomy, add the new topics that you have decided, and then you do the content mapping into it. You have to associate the new clone taxonomy, the new taxonomy that you have created to Employee Center. So that means you can actually maintain separate taxonomies within the taxonomy module and actually have only one of them tagged to the Employee Center. So you could have one tag, which is your current alive taxonomy, and you could have a working taxonomy, which you are iterating for like a future release. We did a deep dive on curated experiences, which kind of showcases how to do each of these steps as one of our academy sessions. So I'll give you the link to it later on, but I highly encourage you to go check that out to ease the number 2 here. Now, once you have that set up, you know what topics you are going to have in Employee Center. It's important to kind of compare what your existing experience is, heavily customized or not customized, however, whatever it is, compare it with where the Employee Center out-of-box experience is. And the decision you want to make is what elements of that old experience you want to pull into the new experience. So to give you an example, one of our customers, they went live with pretty much an out-of-box look and feel for Employee Center. Now this was Employee Center Pro for IT only. And what they did, they liked the My Assets widget, which was a custom widget that they had on their portal. They pulled it out from there and applied it on Employee Center homepage. Another customer did something like they had my most viewed knowledge articles, which was a heavily used widget or most liked widget by their employees. So they picked that up and put it on Employee Center homepage. So you want to do things like that to just know which pieces you want to bring in. But definitely keep in mind that there's a lot of experiences that are new in Employee Center, so you won't need to bring in everything. We actually did an academy session that walks you through this as well. So I highly encourage you to see that. Step 4 is to set up the new capability employee profile. This is not a lot of work. It's just that you have to opt into it and create the profiles, which is like clicking a few buttons and you create it. Then ultimately you're making configurations. You want to brand it. You want to, configure the experience to match with what you want to provide, which is all configuration driven is one of the next steps of investment. So after you're done with this, you're pretty much done with like the definition of Employee Center or deployment of Employee Center. The things that are important are the 2 ones over here. First is you would have to think about the URL change. Like when you're moving from, like employees are accustomed to, let's say, going to /sp, now they'll have to go to /esc. So how do you do that? So if you're just migrating one portal, it's actually pretty easy. Because you can just rename it in the service service portal module and just go to that portal and rename these portals. And I've given an example over here. If it is more than one, then it's a little bit more tricky, and we recommend that you invest a little bit more in OCM. You educate employees on the new URL and put actually a banner in the old portals that direct employees to the new portal. So thinking about your OCM impact is essentially number 6, is everything about. Similar to that is actually number 7 is you may want to redirect some of the legacy pages which people might have bookmarked, and you have created new space for it in Employee Center. So we actually have a page route maps which you could use to do that. Let me compare this with the upgrade, and then I can just pause for questions. Now, like I said, the green ones are something that would be required for any Employee Center Pro deployment. Now, this is focusing more on Employee Service Center to Employee Center Pro upgrade. So let's start from the beginning. Step 1, 2, 3 are something that are exactly the same as the migration ones. So, so you still have to set up the curated experiences. That's one of the main things. If you're using the app launcher feature, then you have to set up that, configure the SSO integrations, and add any of the non-SSO applications. It's just setting up that configuration to work. Once you've done that, you can set up the profile as well. But number 5 over here is what I want to focus on for this upgrade steps. So what really happens is when you upgrade to Employee Center Pro, you won't see any change in your homepage because we are shipping Employee Center Pro with its own homepage, which is not applied to your environment, even though you have all the capabilities that are shipped with Employee Center Pro. So all the new widgets, all the new backend workflows that we have created, all of that will be automatically applied to your portal. But the homepage that the end user sees does not change. So because we already have the new separate homepage, you have two choices. You can choose to retain your homepage. Let's say you want it. You can manually add all the new widgets and the experiences that you have been provided to you into that homepage for whatever reason if you want to do that. And you can use simply the Service Portal Designer for that. The other option is, which is on top of this box on number 5, is to actually run the easy install script. And once you do that, what happens is that new Employee Center Pro homepage is applied to the /ESC portal. Now, if you're making changes to, like if you want to use the new homepage, but actually have it slightly modified, you can do that before you run the script and like, and make the changes accordingly. So the main point to remember is that you still have to do all the configurations and the profile. The setup steps are still the same. Like the number 2 is what requires you the most investment, picking up like what taxonomy you want and how and what content you will map. Everything else is pretty straightforward in my opinion. And I've worked with a lot of customers. The only place where I've heard most questions is around number 2. Now, one more place where I hear a lot of questions is AI search. I do want to highlight that you don't need, like we recommend AI search because it creates the best experience, but we're not mandating it as a requirement to move to Employee Center Pro. So you can move to Employee Center Pro and then choose to get AI search tied in or tied in later on. Okay, before I go into the guidelines, let me just take questions. Ketan, how does CSM portal, ITSM portal, and EC portal tie together? So CSM portal is separate because it's an external facing portal. Now the ITSM portal, I believe you're talking about as service portal, and EC portal is essentially a replacement for service portal. They are technically separate portals, but like I said, EC, we are recommending customers to move out of SP portal and move to Employee Center portal. Can you have external service portal but also use Employee Center for internal users? Yes. So the service portal term can be confusing. We have a tech stack called service portal, and all these portals are actually built on that tech stack. You can have multiple portals in that tech stack. So one portal could be external, which could be based on the CSM portal or a custom portal that you create, and you can still have Employee Center. Can we both have an IT service portal and Employee Center? IT wants to remain separate, not yet ready to migrate. So yes, you can. You can have the service portal /SP separate and /ESC, which will be Employee Center deployed separately. But that's an interesting conversation, and if you would like to discuss with the account team, we would love to encourage IT to get into a single portal, and there are a lot of capabilities we're shipping for that. The search is not currently correctly using AI search and is using the SP search. I would say raise a request, and we can dive deep into it. It's hard for me to like debug right now on that. Employee Center can work as a unified portal like service portal. I mean, can we configure idea portal, HR portal, knowledge portal? Yes, that is the whole point of actually Employee Center. It's a unified portal for ideas, knowledge, catalog. In fact, it's unifying the browse across all of these. It's meant to be a single portal for all ServiceNow use cases that touch an employee. So workplace service delivery, knowledge, HR, communication, journeys, ideas, communities, forums, all of these are on Employee Center. And we literally work across different teams within ServiceNow to make sure all the workflows that are being shipped that touch employee are on Employee Center. So it's literally our flagship employee portal. Now, I do see the time and I don't see any open questions, and I want to quickly touch upon some of the best practices that you should keep in mind. Now, this one is focused on designing. You, of course, want to work with your marketing team to ensure the branding, color palettes, and everything, and the images that you are using are according to brand standards. And this is an important one to highlight because you will see that Employee Center is very visual. So you would want to think about that. The second one over here is you should have a consistent experience across Employee Center pages. You can do a lot. And as we are shipping more capabilities, we're providing you more capability or flexibility to design your own experience. But you should ensure consistency. Taxonomy structure is important. I'll have a slide on that in just a few minutes, but having a good taxonomy structure will make a huge difference in terms of how people are spending time. That's why the number 2 in these steps that I mentioned, where you're setting up the topics, is the most important piece. And then as you're thinking about the widgets, it's important to think about the library of widgets that we have before you create new. So don't customize too much. We'll spend some time on that too. For the taxonomy design, definitely use the out-of-box taxonomy as starting point. I've worked with so many organizations who are trying to redesign it without actually taking a good look at the out-of-box taxonomy. Like it is the best starting point you could potentially have. It is an employee voice and generalized enough for like across industries. I'm not saying you won't have to make changes, just use it as a starting point. The number 2 is avoid creating a sprawl of topics. You may have like in your organization that I want a separate topic, I want a separate topic. You can't have 100 topics for employees to navigate. And the general recommendation is don't have more than 3 tiers of topics. So you're not flooding your mega menu. You're not like, also creating a long list of topics that the employees would have to navigate to. And then it's a good opportunity for you to clean up your content. And you don't really have to tag everything in your taxonomy structure. You can choose to just have the most important pieces and still make the other content that is available to you searchable. So think about that as you're thinking about the taxonomy design. And important to have the user criteria appropriately defined for accessing and managing content. Yeah, and a lot of people make it a blocker. Like we're not ready to build a taxonomy. We just don't have the buy-in for it. You can deploy Employee Center without actually doing the taxonomy in full. You can start with 2 or 3 topics and slowly build it. In fact, ServiceNow internally did the same thing. We started with 2 or 3 topics and we're like slowly building our taxonomy. Guidance for modifying pages. This is not new. This is something that is applicable for any of our portal implementations. You should always review what's available out of box, and review what's available in the widget library. When you are placing it, you ensure you're placing it in the right way using the Service Portal Designer. Think about the intent for that widget as you are applying it, and then modify it or customize it in a scope tab. On customization, one thing to remember is that you have to evaluate your customization based on the value and the technical risk associated with it, and make it according to that. you shouldn't customize too much because that makes upgrade hard. All right, we're running out of time and I don't see any open questions right now, so that's probably a good thing. But here are the top resources that I would highly recommend you to. So the main one to remember over here is the one in the center, is the Employee Center community. And you would see that added in the chat soon. And Employee Center Academy are monthly training sessions that we do, and now Create is a self-implementation content pack. So you will see that. Okay, I'm going to take a few questions. If you want to hold and just like keep asking, I'm just going to answer those. But otherwise, thank you so much for everyone else to join this meeting. Just to remind you, we do have a meetup coming up on the same topic where we can dive deeper into some of these things. All right, Apurva, your question is, what is the difference between Employee Center and Employee Center Core plugin? So Employee Center Core is essentially a backend plugin which you don't need to deploy. You deploy Employee Center, and Employee Center Core is automatically downloaded as part of it. It's they're just capabilities are shipped into different apps for some technical reasons. As we were enhancing ESC, it was required, and especially because we also moved Employee Center out of the family release and into store release. So we had to, make some changes or make some trade-offs in terms of how we do the plugins. But you don't need to worry about Employee Center Core. You only need to worry about Employee Center and download that. So the recording of this slide deck and this webinar will be available. Right. I think I've covered all the questions. Thank you so much, everyone, and have a good rest of your day.